Three, two, one, go. Hi, my name is Rick. I'm not a professional philosopher, and I'm not a spiritual leader, and I don't think I've discovered some secret truth that nobody else has figured out. I'm just a human being who lives in the world, like you. And like most people, I've had periods in my life when things went according to plan, and periods when absolutely nothing went according to plan. I've succeeded at some things. I've failed at more. I've built things. I've watched things fall apart. I've had times when I knew exactly where I thought my life was going, and other times when I had absolutely no idea what was going to happen next. Somewhere in the middle of all of that, I started thinking seriously about a very old question. How should a human being live? And I don't mean that as some abstract philosophical exercise. I mean tomorrow morning. You wake up, you encounter whatever the world puts in front of you. How should you think about that? How should you treat other people? How should you make decisions? What should you do when your plans fall apart? Because I've become convinced of something. We don't know what's going to happen. We make plans, we make predictions, we develop expectations about next week, next year, and the next 20 years. Sometimes we're right, but reality has no obligation to follow those plans. Other people make decisions. Circumstances change, relationships change, economies change, opportunities appear, things break. There is an enormous amount of uncertainty built into simply being alive. And eventually, I arrived at an idea that has become very important to me. We never know what's going to happen, but our responses don't have to be random. We can have a framework. We can develop principles that remain useful even when the world doesn't behave the way we expected it to. And that's where Origin began. Origin is the name I've given to a philosophical framework I've been developing for living deliberately in an uncertain world. It's non-theistic. There are no supernatural claims you have to accept. There's no revelation. There's no sacred text you're forbidden to question. And I'm certainly not asking anyone to believe something simply because I say it's true. In fact, questioning origin has to be part of origin. If something is wrong, we change it. If something can be improved, we improve it. If reality contradicts something we believe, our beliefs must change. Reality doesn't have to conform to our philosophy. Our philosophy has to conform to reality. But we need somewhere to begin. And Origin begins with three ideas. I call them the three pillars: virtue, rationality, and intentionality. So that brings me to the first pillar. It's about virtue. Virtue means how we treat ourselves, one another, and the world matters. Intelligence isn't enough. Success is not enough. Power is not enough. A person can be extraordinarily intelligent and use that intelligence destructively. A civilization can become extraordinarily powerful without becoming particularly wise. So origin begins with virtue. As a starting point, I'm drawing from the four classical cardinal virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Wisdom helps us understand what is good and choose accordingly. Courage allows us to pursue it when doing so is difficult. Justice concerns how we treat other people and what we owe one another. And temperance means self-command, governing our desires rather than allowing our desires to govern us. These ideas are ancient because the problems they address are ancient. Origin isn't trying to discard everything humanity has already learned. It's trying to build upon it. But virtue by itself isn't enough. Good intentions can still lead to bad outcomes. So the second pillar is rationality. What do I mean by rationality? Human beings possess an extraordinary capacity to understand the world. We can observe, reason, experiment, discover that we're wrong, preserve knowledge across generations, solve problems that once seemed impossible. Origin embraces science and evidence as our best means of understanding physical reality. But rationality also requires humility. Being rational doesn't mean thinking you're always right. It means understanding how easily you can be wrong. We examine evidence. We challenge assumptions. We listen to competing arguments. We distinguish what we know from what we merely believe. And when better evidence appears, we change our minds. But knowing what is true still doesn't tell us what to do. That brings us to the third pillar, intentionality. So, what does it mean to live intentionally? It's incredibly easy to drift through life. Something happens, we react. Then something else happens, we react again. And eventually, years have passed. Intentionality means stopping and asking, what am I actually trying to do? What kind of person am I trying to become? What am I trying to build? What deserves my time? Am I actually living according to the things I claim matter to me? Intentionality means living deliberately, not controlling everything that happens, not knowing exactly where you're going to end up, but choosing a direction. So now we have the three pillars. Virtue asks, what is good? Rationality asks, what is true? Intentionality asks, what am I going to do about it? Now the question becomes, how do we use these ideas when life becomes uncertain? That brings me to agency. What is agency? There are enormous parts of reality we don't control. We don't control other people. We don't control natural events. We don't control every opportunity or every misfortune. But within those constraints, we possess something incredibly important: choice. We can learn. We can adapt. We can build. We can cooperate. We can refuse. We can begin again. Agency doesn't mean pretending you control everything. It means recognizing the choices that actually remain yours. But agency only tells us that we still have choices. It doesn't tell us how to choose. That's where deliberate response comes in. So, what is deliberate response? I think it can be summarized very simply. The world may be uncertain. Our response need not be arbitrary. Something happens. Try to understand it. Decide what you're trying to accomplish. Choose how to respond. Then look at what actually happened. Learn from it. Adapt. Try again. That's origin in motion. And that's roughly where origin stands today. It's unfinished. And I'm comfortable saying that. Actually, I hope it always remains unfinished in some sense. A philosophy grounded in rationality has to be capable of learning. A philosophy grounded in intentionality has to be capable of changing direction. And a philosophy grounded in virtue should care more about becoming better than defending its traditions. I expect people to find weaknesses in these ideas. Good. I expect disagreement. Good. I'm not interested in building an ideology where the objective eventually becomes defending that ideology. I'm interested in developing a useful framework for human life. So far, I've been talking about origin at the level of the individual, but I don't think these ideas stop there. What happens when we scale these principles from one person to a community, a society, or humanity as a whole? Communities make decisions. Societies make decisions. Civilizations make decisions. And increasingly, humanity itself is making decisions on a planetary scale. We possess technologies capable of transforming our world. We possess weapons capable of destroying enormous parts of that world. We're changing Earth's climate. We're developing increasingly powerful AI. We're manipulating our own biology. We're beginning to expand human activity beyond Earth. Our technological power is becoming extraordinary. The question is whether our wisdom can keep up with it. I don't know. Nobody does. And that raises the biggest question of all. What are we actually trying to create? For me, the answer is flourishing. I don't merely want humanity to survive. I want us to build good people, good communities, good societies, and eventually a civilization capable of carrying human life and knowledge far beyond this planet. That is an enormous ambition, and it begins somewhere incredibly small, with individual human beings, with how we think, with how we treat one another, and with how we decide what to do next. So, where does that leave Origin today? It leaves us with a framework, not a finished doctrine, not a sacred system, a framework, a starting point, a way of asking better questions about how to live. And that's why I call this philosophy Origin. Every future has an origin. Every transformation begins somewhere. And whatever humanity eventually chooses will become will be made by ordinary human beings. This channel is where I'm going to explore those ideas. I don't expect you to simply agree with me. Examine them, challenge them, improve them, because none of us knows exactly what the future will bring. But uncertainty doesn't require helplessness. We can think rationally, we can live intentionally, we can act virtuously, and we can keep asking one of the oldest and most important questions human beings have ever asked. What should we become? That is Origin, and this is where it begins. Thank you very much.